Welcome to the live service podcast. Yes, it's the live service podcast where we talk about stuff just like hi guns, how you doing? It's been a week.
It's
I didn't know I
yeah.
was didn't know I was doing the intro this week and I just didn't think of anything.
It's been well,
It's
I mean,
and it's been a week.
oh
Just
boy.
we're yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but before we get into anything like that, because there's a lot to talk about, so we're never going to cover everything every week. Before we get into any of that, we're not going to talk about Starfield. I'm just like, I'm not doing that again. How you
No,
been,
we're not
Guns?
actually.
How's your week
I'm
been?
okay. I'm actually we had D&D today. I have D&D every 2 weeks just because of my hectic work schedule. And I'm a technology guy. I love technology. I have Google Docs. I'm, Legend Keeper I use if you haven't used that and all this stuff. But I like to keep a lot of my D&D stuff technologically focused. But I fucking love just having a journal to write shit in. I
Oh,
and
physically writing, like real writing.
yeah, I just love
I've
having a fucking journal to write stuff in. I love writing utensils. I like writing I like it's just this thing where it feels so much more personal than a fucking Google Doc when you see somebody's handwriting and how they jot things down and how they think about things and how they structure things. And there's no like formatting bullshit issues or whatever. You do what you want.
That's funny because I've kind of found the same thing ever since I got really deep back into D&D and made it my job, especially the design aspect. Half of my design happens on notebooks right here, right next to my
Dude,
desk, like
there
physical notebooks, and the other half happens on the computer. But I don't something about it. I'm able to like sit down with like books out and thoughts and ideas and just write better than There's details that happen on the computer and a lot of formatting to make it look like a proper D&D supplement and stuff, but a good half of the design literally happens analog.
there is I'm gonna get one. I saw it and I just haven't thought to buy it. There's a tablet called Remarkable. And there's a second version of it, Remarkable 2, whatever. It's $300 for a tablet, but it lets you write like it's a piece of paper.
I mean, don't like $50 tablets do that?
Well, so here's the thing. It has no,
I'm
no, 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 no.
confused.
It has a bunch of internal functions, but it has a coating on top of the tablet that makes it would feel like paper when you write with stylus, so it has that same kind of drag that paper does. Okay? It has its specific application called journal that functions just like a journal where you flip pages and you can erase stuff and you can just like the backside. I mean, they try to make it like as close to like pen and paper as possible. And you can like customize your pen and stuff like that. It's a really in-depth journal application. The other thing about it is that it also does PDFs. It's wireless, so you take it around and it can save everything to the device and then integrate it with your Google Docs so you can send it out everywhere. It's really just like it's really good. It's all fully integrated. And I like the idea of it a lot. And I'm trying to find an excuse to not buy one, and I'm doing a really bad job.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, but I don't know if I want to spend 300 on a tablet. I've been looking into like just drawing stylus style tablets that I can hook to my PC because
Yeah.
of my map making, the program that I use. I
Hmm.
can get more detailed with like actually being able to
That's
draw rather than using my mouse.
that's the thing for me is that I had a stylist that I could hook up to my PC, and I didn't like it because I would have to look up at the screen and draw with my hand, and there was this disconnect when I did that. I really needed to look at my hand while I'm drawing. I don't fucking know why. It's got to be a brain training thing, right? But like something about looking at my hand reinforces what I'm visually doing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's I get what you're saying because I can think back to like when I first started trying to use this program to draw my maps. It was the same thing with the mouse, you know. Like I'm not. It's kind of hard to, you know,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
disconnect. And feel like it'd probably be there for the actual drawing pad too. But I can get a lot more detailed with that. Speaking of D&D maps, I gotta share this story. You still use Roll20, right?
No, I use Forge VTT.
Oh, you're using the new. Oh, interesting, right? So, but you did use Roll20. You
I
know
have,
all
yeah,
about Roll20. Yeah.
extensively.
You know how like when you're pro, you can upload bigger things and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I my players laughed at me because I called it a mega dungeon, and now they keep going mega dungeon.
Oh god.
But they got into this thing where literally I hit the Roll20 cap. I had to cut this map that I made into 4 slices and upload each slice individually, and then paste them together in the Roll20 because it wouldn't take the upload. It was too big. I had to cut it in 4.
Yeah.
That's how big the map they're on is. It's I mean it's wild, but I don't know why. I just thought of that, but yeah, I kind of wanted to point that out.
That's I mean, it does take pretty big file sizes, so you have to get kind of up there. I have okay. There's going to be if you're any of my players, which I don't think they watch, but if you do, Crash or Tex or Raven or even Kittens, don't listen to this next like 5 minutes because it's spoilers. Just skip 5 minutes ahead.
Listen to it.
Don't know. I'll know if you do because I know your plan. Okay. How much about Critical Role do you know?
I mean, I watched all of season 1, all of season 2, and season 3. I've watched like 20 or so episodes and got bored, and I'm
Dope,
just
great.
gonna catch up sometime.
Season 3 gets much better at like episode 40. Way more interesting. There is a lull in season 3, but it gets yeah. There's okay, well we'll talk remind me to come back to this. There's this weird thing that people like unnecessarily hate Critical Role and I don't understand it. We'll come back to that. So the campaign that I'm doing is set in Exandria, Critical Role's world built out by Matt Mercer, and it was easy for me because first off, it's actually almost easier than just doing regular Dungeons and Dragons for a couple of reasons. Number one, none of my players watch Critical Role, so I know everything and they know nothing, and it's great. Number two, in the world of Critical Role, because there are so many fans, or critters as they call them, because there's so many fans, they make so many resources for all kinds of stuff in Critical Role for free, online, in terms of art, maps, dungeons, items, like just there is a constant, there will be like some new weird creature on the show, and next week people will have created art and stat blocks of it. And that makes it incredibly easy to access this huge wealth of things inside Critical Role, as well as just all the other regular D&D shit. But so currently, you remember who Halas Ludogren is? He's the mage inside the Happy Fun Ball in the gym.
Yeah. I didn't remember until you explained that. Then yeah, no. Then I would.
So in Critical Role, Halas's real body is stuck somewhere in the astral plane, just kind of like floating there. And there are like clones of Halas apparently in places, like this was alluded to at some point, and then Halas's consciousness is actually stuck inside a gym. One of the plot lines that I have going for them now is that one of Halas's clones was in a library, was in a small tower shoved up somewhere in the Ashkeeper Peaks, and they found this laboratory and they found the clone of Halas. And the clone of Halas is aware that he's a clone and that he needs to get back to the real Halas and do all this shit. But it's also like he's Halas and he thinks he's a great... Anyway, they also found... So this takes place between Campaign 2 and Campaign 3. So I have a bunch of gray room that I can... Because it's like 10 or 15 years, something like that. They also found Halas's Happy Fun Ball. I don't really know how they found it after, you know, CR2, the campaign 2 had it or whatever, but it's there. So they have it. My party has it currently, and they have not used it yet. They believe it is some kind of teleportation device and that it'll teleport them somewhere, which they're totally right about. They just don't know that it teleports them inside the ball, right? They stumbled upon a town of hollow ones, and there was a criminal syndicate that has a plan to blow up a vault inside the firmament, which is in Rosana, which is a Kryn dynasty capital city. They found plans by this hollow one criminal syndicate to blow the vault up, Ocean's 11 style, go in and steal what they believe to be is a beacon being kept there.
Okay.
And you know what the Luxor beacons are, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The Kryn dynasty uses them to perpetuate their eternal life, blah blah blah. My group stole their plan and all their explosives and went to the vault and is attempting to execute the plan to steal this Luxor beacon. And their escape plan is Halas's Happy Fun Ball. So they are going to set off like 100 pounds of explosives, blow the side out of a vault wall in the bottom of the firmament inside the Kryn dynasty's capital city, and then they're going to think they're teleporting out of the city. Instead, they're just all going to be teleported inside a ball. They have no idea that it's just going to teleport them inside. They think it's going to take them somewhere else. And I'm just letting it. I have to like mute myself because it's just like, just let it happen, guns. Just let it happen, guns. Just let it happen, guns.
I mean, at least they you know, they're walking into this one because they have no idea. But let's be honest, if they had an idea, they'd still walk into it. Because that's what D&D players do.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Oh, and they also like, man, there's so many it's so neat because there's so many multifaceted things to this that I'm applying that I really love, and that they don't watch Critical Role, so I kind of have my own space to make this different from. I don't have Critical Role fans screaming at me, "You messed this up, you can't do it." I can just do whatever the fuck I want, and it's so cool because I'm like, what if this happened instead? And nobody can tell me that I'm wrong. Go fuck yourselves. Pew, 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 pew.
I mean, there's positives and negatives that come with that. I've been told multiple times because I do this as a living that I should do like streamed games and stuff. And I'm like, one, you know, like my games are private for a reason. You know, two, like you can't just do that with like any paid game. First of all, I wouldn't charge people if I'm streaming because you know I'm making money off of them. I'd like more than likely pay them. Second of all, you have to have the right people for that.
Yes, you have to have the right.
Yeah, because if you don't have people that are actual performers and good, you know, like you can be a good D&D game, but being a good D&D game on screen is two different things. Because in a really good D&D game, there'll be times where you guys stop and like, I don't know how my character would you know respond to this. Let's discuss it, and then you know we get off on a 5-minute tangent, and then we come back to it. That doesn't make for a good viewing experience.
Exactly. So I love my boys that I DM for right now. They are not character actors. They like the mystery, the intrigue, the combat, and the character leveling and the power fantasy. That's what the loot too. That's what they are there for. They are not character actors. I love being a character actor, and I try to bring that to every single one of my games. Like the last big one that I played, we did Dragons of a Lost Odyssey. You've done that before, I believe, right?
Yes, I'm still running it right now. It's amazing.
I had a monk from Eurasia. That's the place, right? The southeastern continent that has the monks. They're like Spartans.
Aresia.
It's been like 4 years or 3 years.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Aresia, yes. And his name was Orpheus. Morpheus without the M, okay? And he was like a semi-tanned, dressed like a Spartan monk that used the turtle shield thing. So he always had a spear and a shield. And he was super dexterous. He was really weirdly wise. He was kind of charismatic. He was okayly strong, but he's dumb as a fucking sack of bricks. But he doesn't know that. He just thinks he's one of the best warriors in the world because Orisia produces the best warriors in the world. So he goes, I know I'm the best. What do you mean? Of course I can scale that cliff. You want to watch me jump off this 500-foot waterfall? You got it. There's nothing I can't do inside my physical repertoire. Like, just that kind of attitude. And he was one of my favorite characters to play because I'm just like, first off, if there was ever something I had to do that involved his intelligence, and it's like, well, of course I would do this, but he's stupid, so I'm going to make an intelligence check for myself. I would impose these rules on myself, which I think self-imposed rules are some of the best players ever do. But I would impose like intelligence checks on myself all the time to determine whether Orpheus realizes this is a bad idea or not. For instance, we climbed like some 600-foot tower, and monks have slow fall as an ability. And he looked over and it was like we had to climb all the way back down. He's like, I really don't want to climb stair. I can make that. And just jumps off a 500-foot tower.
Of course he does.
And he lives because he has slow fall. He was really hurt. But he lived because he had slow fall. He was like sitting there at the bottom with fucking broken ankles and like bone coming out of his shin, and somebody healed him and he kept on his way.
But did you die though?
Yeah, but did you die? He was also incredibly stupid. Like, okay, one of our characters in the party was invisible. Through one of the remnants you could get, like they were always invisible, and we were fighting one of the final bosses, and the boss can see the invisible person, and so like the invisible person is tracking him, and Orpheus is watching their eyes and doesn't realize that their teammate's invisible, and so then he just starts like stabbing at whatever the boss is watching because he doesn't know their teammate's invisible. And so I actually like stabbed my party member on accident.
It's just
It's so
all right,
good.
Look. You told your D&D story. Now I gotta share one because this is hilarious, right?
I will say before we get into that, maybe one day you should DM for us, and I can be one of the character actors. We need to find like 4 or 5 other, and maybe put on some kind of long-term streamed production. We can talk about details in that another time. But I
was gonna say before I did my story. Another thing is I just like I've recently people have requested like Brian, why don't you do streams? They've also said Brian, why don't you just like do YouTube? Like know so much D&D knowledge, and
yeah,
like you're a designer and writer, like you can you have. And I'm like, yeah, that's true, but I don't really know what to do because I'm not a great editor, and I don't really want to like just sit in front of a camera and talk to it, you know?
yeah.
So like, what do I put in the background? What do I, what is the pictures? I'd rather my face not be up there, but I'm okay if it has to be or something. So it's just kind of weird, but yeah, we can
figure
work
it out.
something out in the future. We'll figure it out. But the story I want to tell happened yesterday in my Friday 8 p.m. game. So they're in Eberron. You know what Eberron is, right?
Yes.
Eberron's like the Magipunk world. It's where Eberron's D&D taken to its logical like end, as in magic exists, so magic replaces technology.
Yes.
It replaces electricity. There are magically run trains. There are this and that. So they're in the city of Sharn, which is the city of towers, and they're underneath it. They're going into this mega dungeon, right? They're going down into an area called the Cogs, and they're going through some piping systems, and they come through like a T intersection in this pipe. Immediately ahead of them in the T intersection is a door. To the left, it begins to climb up and around back the way they came. They know don't want to go that way. To the right, it goes deeper into the complex that they're trying to get into. However, there are three like magical, like blue glowing conduits sticking out of the wall, and every second or so, like electricity arcs from them and starts like burning the walls and stuff. So they're like, I can't run through that without taking damage, right? So they logically, all right, what's behind the door? Pick the lock, open the door. Behind the door is some sort of mechanism that they are unable to determine its inner workings, but I describe it as, this mechanism that has pipes and magical conduits feeding into it, and feeding out of it is a single magical conduit heading into the wall with those electrical sparks coming out of it with a
Mm-hmm.
valve on it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They talked about this for a good 10 minutes, and then since they couldn't figure it out, I put air quotes, they ran through the electricity. None of them thought, magical conduit heading into the wall with the electric coming out of it with a valve on it. Let me turn the valve. Not once was that attempted.
Well, so okay, this is
I'm
one thing
just
I've discovered. Here's something I've discovered with players over time. I describe something to them, and in my head, I have described something perfectly reasonable to them. And I get it. I understand it perfectly. And none of my players have any idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, in this scenario, I talked to them afterwards, and they were like, "Oh, we're just dumb," and so one of them claimed they didn't hear the valve thing, though I said it multiple times. But I have I designed make my own maps. This was all on the map. There was a machine with a conduit coming out of it with a valve on it. That was on the map, like clearly visible. But the reason I wanted to tell this story is, one, it's hilarious. Two, this is why you always hear any person that's a designer or a DM in D&D tell you, follow the simple rules of keep it simple, stupid. That
Yeah.
yes, because your players together, individual people are smart. Put a group of them together, they become really dumb. If you put really
Yep.
complicated puzzles in D&D, they will not solve it. Stick to really simple Zelda and Skyrim style puzzles where you're just matching three things or flipping a switch or moving something onto a pressure plate, because that's they're not going to figure out much more deeper than that. So yeah,
Yeah. Yep. That's
I
that's
just
true.
I just
It's
I couldn't believe, like, they asked me to like re-describe the thing multiple times, and one of them's like, can I find a big switch that says the word off on it? And I'm like, no, you don't find a big switch that says the word off on it, but you do notice this magical conduit coming out going into the wall with the electrical currents, and a valve on it. And he's like, oh, well, since I can't figure it out, I'm just going to try to sprint through. And I was like, what the
I mean, yeah, it comes down to player like the DM choice there. Do you
Oh, I let
do
him run through and take some damage too. And I was just like, okay, go for
yeah,
it.
it's a funny thing. It is a
Yeah,
funny
I
thing
mean,
indeed.
it's just D&D, man, it's fun.
It
Also,
is.
I want to send you a picture quick. This is how I opened a D&D game. This was Thursday night. This is with the Dragonlance. I love Dragonlance. But we opened with some, well, I mean, we opened with a lot of like role playing stuff, but then like, an hour and a half in, we got into an actual combat, and this was my first rolls of the night. Just to show you there.
Oh,
The
you
red
wrote
squares.
you
The red
you
squares
rolled.
are natural ones.
Oh.
Just for those who can't see, I rolled for 7 monsters. 5 of them all rolled natural ones. I rolled 5 natural ones back to
The
back.
other four of them rolled, or the other two of them rolled sevens. So
Yeah, the other 2 of them rolled the exact same roll, and it was really low too.
yeah, that's
I was like, okay, yeah, you guys win this battle.
Listen, it swings different ways. I accidentally crit. I mean, I didn't accidentally crit. I crit a player once that was level 3 with a ghoul, and they died.
It happens. I mean, yeah, it's. I just thought that was hilarious to point out. Like, just because something has a very low chance of happening does not mean it won't happen. Yeah, it happens. Yeah.
Speaking
Just
of things that had a low chance to happen, but happened anyway, have you kept up with the coup in Russia?
what do you mean kept up with it? Just started last night / today.
And it
I mean,
ended today too.
Oh, is it over? What?
Yeah, and Putin's
What?
not. Yeah, okay. All right, okay. Generally, we don't talk a ton of politics. We're going to briefly skim over this because it's kind of like huge world news. The Wagner Group couped against Russia. The head leader guy, Priorsky or whatever his name is, did it. I can't remember his name. Apparently, the guy from Belarus talked to the leader of Wagner, and he agreed to disembark to another country and be what's the word? Cleared of all charges, yada yada yada, because like the Wagner group had zero resistance. Like they were just walking into Russia or walking towards Moscow essentially. Like there was not a shot in hell that this wasn't happening. And so like he came to some agreement. I really don't know what the fuck, like what, this is so weird that he just like decided to not and turn around and that he's a plant. But like maybe this is like Russia showing just how weak they are and how weak Putin is, and it's super weird.
Yeah, that I didn't know the part about that last part. That's weird. That's I mean everybody was talking about it and like what it meant and everything, and yeah, I mean that's
Yep.
I don't know how to respond to that. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. It's very fucking weird. Side note. Of Russia. Did you see Battlestate Games' thing?
I did not.
Okay. I'm gonna skim because it's really big, okay? And like we're gonna talk about some of the things that they've done that are just fucking weird. Let me see here. Let me go to BSG's statement. Not CSG, BSG. God damn it. Yes,
Learn
okay.
to type guns.
Listen. Open link in new tab, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Here we go. Nice. All right. There we go. All right. Official statement from Battlestate Games on illegal data mining information. I'm going to skim this because it's big. Data mining is defined as extracting information, blah, 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 data mining, blah, blah, blah. One of the examples, data mining, blah, 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 blah. Throughout the past few years, with an increase in data mined information circling around various websites as well as accounts on social media, while some people believe that the developers from Escape from Tarkov are not sharing information about various hidden changes of the game, they are not. This is confirmed. Developers from Escape to Tarkov are literally sharing nothing. We also would like to remind that any data retrieval without official permission is a direct breach of clauses blah 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 of the license agreement from Battlestate Games. Then they like talk about, we want you to understand the difference between leaks and teasers. Data mining can give unfair advantages for people who do not support it. Then they get to this bit, which is the really confusing bit. If you are looking for specific information, there is official resources supported by Battlestate Games Wiki, which may not be updated as frequently and in time, but it does not use any illegal tools. Wiki is also a fully community-driven project and is always down to receive help from any more experienced players. We will continue to work in any direction for transparency and share information about the changes and updates about the game information we believe will be enough for players to stay up to date with the recent flow of development. From the time of this statement being published, we will start taking action towards all personalities sharing that data mined information. This will result in all in-game accounts involved in the data mining and or sharing data originating from data mining being banned, and platforms getting involved receiving warnings and further actions taken afterwards. I don't know what the fuck they mean by you're gonna sue them? You're from Russia. You're in no state to sue anybody. We do this for the majority of our community who want to enjoy the events, the game, and the development of it. as the company intended. We thank you for all of your ongoing support and are looking forward to our future in Escape from Tarkov. Okay. So there's a second part to this, which we'll get to in just a second, but a couple of things. Number one, yes, data mining kind of sucks. But there's two different types of data mining. Number one, narrative data mining, which data mines things like events, cool stuff, surprises that developers bake into the game. That sucks because they're ruining it for people. But then there's the data mining that many of us desperately need for a game like Escape from Tarkov, which tells us what the loot chance of an item is on a map, or how often it spawns in a certain area, or where bosses like Killa now spawned, because they changed the boss spawn destination mid-season and made his chance so indefinitely small no one could find him until data miners told us about it. Then people started to find him in small batches. Otherwise, we would have never known and searched for fucking weeks, probably, if not months. Or, data miners also tell us things like the random recoil percent chances and all the stupid bullshit BSG puts in the game. There's a ton of stuff we wouldn't know if it wasn't for data miners. So yes, I think data mining is bad when they spoil surprises or cool events or narrative stuff in the game. But when they're giving us empirical data, like the stupid random recoil chances or like boss spawn locations or item spawn locations, they're great. They're good even.
I want to interrupt you here because there are scenarios where the narrative data mining is good as well. I'd like to point out World of Warcraft and the dumb shit that they've put in recently that I don't play the game anymore, but I read about it on Twitter. That people were like, this is wrong. Also lore breaking, and you know what I mean, like, and that was caught in the data mine, and they were like, okay, now we're gonna fix that, and that's happened a lot.
Wasn't that
they put
the whole
something in, and it's Alex Straza was the most recent.
Yeah, it was
thing,
the whole Alex Straza sexual assault thing. So
yeah,
to
that was the most
kind
recent
of
version.
To talk about
all
it
coming from data mining as well.
To give a quick synopsis of that, what Brian's talking about is that there was a quest in the PTR of World of Warcraft where the players ostensibly sexually assaulted Alex Straza to force her to have these like dragon's brood. That's part of like Warcraft 2 lore and stuff like that. The weird part about it was they were like making the players casually do it.
It was making her like okay with it and say something that was lore breaking as well, because you actually talked to her about it. And it's that's probably like one of the worst examples because it includes sexual assault. But like it's literally happened in the past where like they put something in that like just doesn't add up with everything else they've put in, and players have to call them out on it and be like,
it's really weird
before release.
It was really weird. One of the jokes that we made was, it was like, I bet Bobby Kotick wrote this because he saw a rape joke and he just couldn't pass it up. Because that's Bobby Kotick's type of humor. But anyway, so yeah, sometimes that can be used for good. The majority of the times, narrative data mining is not, but on occasion, yes, it is. So data mining can be a good thing.
Spoil things, yeah. It's weird because different games have different like relationships with data miners. Some it's good, some it's bad.
Yes,
and some just are constantly adversarial when they don't need to be to all data miners. Which
follow up to this story. A content creator was banned today, Logical Solutions. He is the head moderator for Landmark. He's also a Twitch partner, and he's a creator of the EFT bot and Tarkov-Changes. He's also a known data miner. So he's a Twitch partner, he's a content creator, he's a streamer, and he's a moderator for a very big streamer too. He was banned the day after that announcement was made. He then messaged Nikita, and Nikita responded to him, "You shouldn't share how you data mine and everything. We saw it, so you broke the rules." Again, this was literally like the day. So what he was, I'll get to what he was showing. He says, "I didn't show anything in this stream." Nikita was like, "You lie." And he's like, "You're talking about the public gist. You don't take down what I said you don't use." Nikita sent him a screenshot of today's stream where he was showing data mined information from 6 months ago. So all this information that he's showing on screen has been public for 6 months, has been known about for 6 months, is already out there in the wild, and soon may not even be applicable because of one of the upcoming wipes. So he got banned for showing 6-month-old data. And got banned like immediately too.
This is where we actually need cameras because I'm just shaking my head and Patrick Stewart face bombing.
And it gets better, Brian. Today, BSG announces they will be releasing an API for Tarkov.
Okay.
So, to put it all together, what an API does is it allows developers to plug into the game and pull information that the developer allows them to, such as things like spawn chance for items, boss spawn locations, weapon recoil patterns, armor value, damage value of weapons, those kinds of things, right?
I mean, yeah, any number of things, but yeah, those are things. Mainly used to, make companion apps and things to check stuff in game, out of game, and yeah.
The reason why people now realize they were being aggressive about data mining is because they want to control the release of information with the API. But they did it in the completely fucking backwards way. They come out of the gate and they go, we're going to ban anybody that talks about data mine information. Oh, hey, by the way, we're releasing an API so you don't have to data mine information anymore. It's not how you start the conference. You go, hey guys, we're releasing an API for all of our players so that they can now access that information without data mining. Speaking of data mining, we're going to have harsher, stricter terms on data mining where it may result in a ban if you're caught doing it. That's how the fucking messaging, they are so stupid. It is boggling that this was the idea of good messaging for them. This is a PR blunder that they could have made this a win for them. This could have been a positive thing on social media. People could have been rejoicing about Escape from Tarkov getting an API. Instead, they're just getting tremendous amounts of fucking hate, all because they are shit at wording things. This is why you need community managers. This is why you need somebody that looks at this statement and goes, wait, so we're releasing an API? Why don't we say that part first, guys? That seems like the good... What?
Yeah, that's...
It's fucking mind-boggling.
I mean, to me, it's just, like, taking out even the API part, because yeah, that was dumb to do it in that order, but even taking that out, you do not need to be adversarial with your data miners, especially all data miners, because as you explained, they're very different. Yep, community manager is needed. But a lot of games don't have community managers anymore because people just like quit that job and the good ones already have good jobs.
Yeah,
no one wants to do it.
They're desperate
it's
for some of
sad.
them. Yep.
Yeah.
There's a lot of headlines coming out of the speaking of gaming headlines, which is like half what we talked about anyway. There's a lot of headlines coming out of the FTC court case with Xbox.
I spent 2 days actually like getting up in the morning and putting on a headset and logging into the Zoom call and just listening while I did my morning stuff.
It's fucking fascinating. It's also
very fascinating how inept our government is. Yes,
it is looking incredibly bad for the FTC, and I'm actually kind of happy about that.
Yes, like incredibly bad.
Here's a couple of things. I'm actually pretty... Is Microsoft getting bigger a good thing? No. It is better under Microsoft's tutelage than Activision's current tutelage, because we all know Bobby Kotick is this ginormous piece of human-shaped shit. And Phil Spencer's actually pretty ostensibly a good guy. What's been weird is the hot takes that I have seen from people about how much they hate Xbox and Phil Spencer. And I can't fathom this. Does your life have such little substance, such little meaning, such little imposition that and there are I've seen this. There are people on Twitter, Phil Spencer should be fired. He's terrible at Xbox, and PlayStation will take over the gaming market if that keeps going this way.
Console warriors, man. There's something wrong with them
Dude.
from all sides. Something wrong with them.
Yeah. Anyway, there's some really interesting headlines.
Yeah, there's a lot of as you put it, headlines that are coming out that are straight clickbait and lies because everybody thinks they can get away with it.
Well, let's start with this and see how much of it is a truth and how much is of it a lie. Xbox insinuates in the hearing that it bought Bethesda to block Starfield from becoming a PlayStation 5 console exclusive.
That's not what Phil Spencer said. I was listening live.
So
that's a very very what do you call biased read on what he said.
Sure.
There was a line of questioning where it was brought up that it was a consideration of, hey, we're in last place and we know that they're like, going to Bethesda and paying for exclusives. So, we can't, if we want to ever not be in last place, then, we can't just sit back and let that kind of stuff continue to happen. So that was a consideration. That's not, we specifically bought them because of this, to do this thing.
That is so
there was a lot more than just that went into it,
So basically what he's saying is that there was the possibility that it could have one day been a PlayStation 5. We were aware that PlayStation was paying for exclusives like they paid for Deathloop, which was that's
exactly what he said.
It's like if they're already paying for Deathloop, which was a pretty okay game, how many steps are they away from paying for Starfield? Let's just go ahead and buy Bethesda because they sell a lot of really good games. This just seems like a good idea. So ostensibly that's what he's getting at, but they've twisted it into this.
Yeah, and it wasn't let's go ahead and buy Bethesda. It was we got to do something about this. And then months later, Bethesda put out feelers saying, hey, we're looking to be acquired. And Xbox was like, oh, perfect, let's do that. You know what I mean? Xbox didn't approach Bethesda technically. Bethesda put feelers out to multiple people, and then Xbox jumped on it.
Well, and to be honest with you, Sony is stretching to afford them. Sony is stretching to afford Bungie. Like, you notice how they bought Bungie, and that was really kind of it? That's because that was, like, all their cash revenue flow that they had. And it's not even... we got to talk about the merger thing. Yeah. But essentially
Can we talk about Indiana Jones and all the headlines that were lying about that.
Yeah. But the $4 billion was about all PlayStation could afford for Bungie. Okay. This one's really interesting. Has Xbox really lost the console war? I'm gonna flip through this really mad fast. The second day of the FTC Microsoft hearing was really all about one man, Phil Spencer. The Microsoft Xbox chief took the stand to discuss Microsoft's losing console war, Sony's aggressive and hostile competition to paint the Xbox in the distant third place where it's struggling to compete. Spencer also revealed Microsoft looked at buying Zynga to improve its mobile gaming prospects, which is true, and acquired Bethesda after learning that Starfield might, at least this fucking article puts it in halfway decent context, which is that Bethesda acquired Bethesda after learning that Starfield might become a PlayStation exclusive. He also importantly swore under oath that Microsoft won't pull Call of Duty from PlayStation. That promise turned into some frustrations with the FTC line of questioning from Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley and some testy exchanges between the FTC's lawyer, James Weingarten, and Spencer.
She straight up spoke up and shut the lawyer down 3 times,
which is hilarious.
That line of questioning, people audibly oofed at one of them. They were like, "Oh my god," because she was clearly not having it. She was like, "No, just move on."
So yeah, what is this in regards to? I mean, they did talk about like they are losing the console war essentially, and it is true to a degree because they are third place in sales.
There's this very thing. The FTC lawyer came forward and said, So you've lost the console war, right? And Phil was like, "Excuse me, what?" He's like, "Well, there's this concept of console wars, blah blah blah," and explained it. And Phil was like, "We don't use terms like that. That's more of like a social fan concept that we don't really, But if you look at it like market share at the moment, we are losing. We are in last place, and we recognize that, and we're making steps to amend that."
Okay. What about the bit about Indiana Jones being an exclusive?
It is an exclusive. The bit everybody's saying is that they are taking it from PlayStation 5, that it was going to be a PlayStation 5 title. And then once they acquired Bethesda, that it no longer became a PlayStation 5 title. And that's reaching, that's adding on information. They're saying it was going to be when what actually was it could possibly be. So when Bethesda signed a contract with Disney, Disney said we want this put on multiple consoles. I'm sorry, multiple platforms, not just a single platform. And that was the original contract, is to be on multiple platforms, to be determined which platforms at a later date as we nail more information down and get a better understanding of what the game is going to be, things like that, right? When Microsoft bought Bethesda, they went back and renegotiated with Disney and said, "Hey, Xbox and PC are multiple platforms. Are you good with that if we give you this, this cut of it?" And Disney said, "Yes." There was never a PlayStation version signed in a contract, and there was never a PlayStation version actively worked on. It was never actually done. So technically, realistically, in every form of the word, nothing was ever taken from PlayStation because PlayStation didn't have it to begin with. But every headline says that it was going to be on PlayStation, and then it was made exclusive.
Okay. If we can move on to the next one. Microsoft claims to have achieved first milestone in creating reliable and practical quantum. Oh, that's sorry. I clicked on a Microsoft just generalized. The takeaway. This was an interesting takeaway that Elder Scrolls 6 is likely 5+ years away. We already knew. I mean, like, I think we already knew that. Anybody that pays attention to gaming, I literally said in the last show, if we're lucky, we get Elder Scrolls 6 in 5 years, but realistically, it's at least 6 away.
Yeah, and honestly, it could be less. They didn't say that. Everybody's like, they were asking him, like, could he guarantee, which was weird. The FTC weren't like fighting for consumers. They kept bringing up PlayStation. Where you know, swear to, under oath right now to add this to PlayStation, to add this. It was kind of weird that they kept
Yeah.
doing that. But they asked about Elder Scrolls 6 and putting it on PlayStation 5, and he's like, I can't do that because the Elder Scrolls 6 is early in development. I don't know what the gaming market will look like when it comes out. It could be 5 or more years or less years away, and I don't know if there's going to be a PlayStation 5 then.
Yep.
So no, I can't.
Yeah, there's actually this is a really good section of the quote. The FTC was asking Phil Spencer to ship Call of Duty on PlayStation no matter what the terms are, which first off is like that's a full stop absurd statement there. And they were literally trying to say if Sony refuses to pay, you have to keep shipping Call of Duty even for $0. At that point, Judge Corley cut them off. Cut that line of questioning off, which is like again, it's like, dude, how many times you got to be like fucking Christ. Um, it's to be honest with you, it's not great. Like I understand what the FTC judge is trying to do, but he's just doing it in like a stupid way. He clearly does not understand what's going on. He
He
doesn't
doesn't
understand
understand
the
a lot.
market. He doesn't understand gaming. It is clear that he is trying to just dig and probe for anything that might be useful in terms of the blockage of this. Like, why should this not go through is what he's fishing for in all of these.
Yeah, he was asking a lot of questions of Sarah Bond, of Phil, of everybody, of just like the same thing over and over, like just restating and asking another question, and the judge finally telling him to move on because he's just trying to get them to slip and say something the game you can use. Because technically, I mean, you can say what you want about, you know, a corporation getting bigger or monopolies. This is even close to a monopoly, so if you make that argument, you're dumb. But you can say what you want about corporations getting bigger or whatever. Nothing about this is illegal. Nothing
Yeah.
about this goes against what should be okay by U.S. law. They have no case, but they're trying to just like get a gotcha moment and then build a case. You know,
What's
it's
really
really sad.
sad to me is that how supportive people are of Sony, and Sony is so anti-consumer that it is crazy. Like it is insane to me how anti-consumer PlayStation is. Um and the things that they do, and yet people are still just ever so happy and ready to support them.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Like, look, you caught me, you know, how many ever years ago? I'm trying to do math in my head at the moment. I would have been saying very similar stuff about Xbox because they were being, you know, run by very different people back then and were being very anti-consumer and stupid. And I called them out for it. I'm gonna do the same thing when Sony does it. I'm not a console warrior. I'm looking at both
Yeah.
sides, you know,
Dude, the original
evenly.
launch of the Xbox One was a disaster.
Yes, so much.
Um,
And yeah, dude deserved to be fired. So, and he was.
yeah.
So yeah,
Well, let go. Don Matrick. He went to Zynga.
yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean,
Um,
yeah, when you're that big, it isn't fired. It's always let go or move
right,
positions. But you got
exactly.
fired.
Yeah.
You
He
got
he
fired.
he
Let's be
moved
honest.
on.
Yeah.
We could talk up all day about Microsoft, but there's more hearings coming Monday, Tuesday, so the fun doesn't stop.
The fun doesn't stop. I will say that like I follow multiple like lawyers on Twitter and other spaces, both in and outside of the gaming area, and like everybody says that like unless the FTC drops like a bomb in the next day, which it doesn't look like they will because everybody says the expert they're going to bring next week is horrible and has already contradicted himself, and that will be brought up by Microsoft,
Nice.
then they've already lost. Like they failed to do what they needed to do in the first 2 days. And
Great.
it's just kind of a wash from here. It's just we have to let it play out. They're literally just wasting taxpayer money.
Um, do you want to talk about how meh Final Fantasy 16 is?
I mean, I agree. It's meh. I mean, it's very meh. It's. I mean, it's. A lot of people are saying not my Final Fantasy, this and that, blah blah blah. I don't care about any of that. I mean, Final Fantasy is a title. You know, all Final Fantasy games are different, but it's not a great game. It's 50% cutscene, and then the gameplay. It has some great gameplay in certain parts, but then the rest of the gameplay is fucking filler, and it's boring as all get out, and it's whiplash. Like you'll go from like a super epic fight, which is also super simple, uh, but you know the spectacle is there, and then 5 minutes later you're going and getting dirt samples on a side quest that they're forcing you to do, and it's just like what?
So
And
I
it's
I
and that's not an exaggeration. It is 50% cutscene. You are sitting there just controller on desk watching.
I yeah, I know the full story. Um I am fully like I know what happens front to back. It's a bit of a red herring, which I'm not always a fan of red herring stories unless they actually like fucking give ostensible reasons and narrative drive. They don't here, by the way. They don't give narrative reasons and ostensible drive. It does, um there are certain things that just happen. But if you kind of ignore those narrative plot holes and just push through, it's actually a pretty okay story. But it's all told in cutscenes. Honestly, if you want to experience this game, just go watch Final Fantasy 16 the movie, which is like 5 hours of cutscenes or more. And it's pretty okay. It's pretty all right.
Yeah,
Um
I would call this game a resounding meh. The biggest thing that I mean, like I this morning I watched Skill Up's review, and I like I don't always agree with Skill Up, and I actually have a problem with this video as well. But I agree with his review of it. He's dead on his review. He refuses to say something and do something that he does with other games because he's a YouTuber and he's afraid of being attacked by the fan base. But I'll
Yeah.
let him get away with it because his actual content of his review is good. But then you have people like Jesse Cox. I love you, Jesse Cox. But the way you're acting on Twitter right now because people don't like this Final Fantasy, oh my god, dude, get over yourself.
I think Jesse Cox has a great personality, but I do think that sometimes he acts kind of childish with his opinions. So here's the thing. People that are like, not my Final Fantasy and blah, 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 blah. I've played like 5 different Final Fantasy games. I've not played that many, admittedly, because I'm not a huge Final Fantasy fan.
I've played every single one of them, even the spin-offs.
Okay.
Literally every single one.
Well, this is great because we kind of have two polar opposites there. Is it not the case that like most Final Fantasies are usually big swings in difference? Like, because it's not supposed to be the same type of game or even in the same realm or the same characters. It's just kind of like loosely related to each other, right?
As far as story, lore, and everything goes, yes, and even in some gameplay elements. But there's things that always happen in Final Fantasy until now, and except for certain spinoffs that said they weren't, and that's like deep party systems, customization, RPG elements, things like that that have been stripped out of this one. So I get where people saying not my Final Fantasy come from. It's not just turn based. People are latching onto that. But yes, as far as like story, world building, lore, it is completely different every time, and the RPG systems are completely different every time. But there are RPG systems. That's the point.
So yeah, there are RPG systems here. They are very loose. They are very bland. They are very toned down. I don't think the combats.
No, I'm saying that's the final. Sorry, I
Oh,
wouldn't
oh,
consider
oh.
this
Well,
game RPG systems. I think it's just
there. No, there
it's not
are
enough.
RPG systems
I
here.
don't think it's enough to count. I don't think it's enough to count in this.
No. I
this is
mean,
this is Devil May Cry Final Fantasy.
sure, but there is, even if it's bad, there is an attempt at RPG systems.
I mean, I guess if you count, hey, I got a new sword. It's literally +5 stats.
Yeah, so that is something.
Thousands of
yes,
stats.
so
Yeah,
this is something that I
armor right now. And
well. You're not touching on the big focal point of this. The RPG elements is that you can feel and see your character getting stronger in RPGs, right? You don't really get to feel your character getting stronger. In fact, in some cases you feel weaker because bosses and fights get harder and harder as you go, and you have more abilities. It's almost like they scaled this so that you just kind of feel, even if you have new abilities, you always kind of feel the same power. You never really feel crazy strong. But secondly, your main character, Clive, looks exactly the fucking same from beginning to end. Except for the time jumps. There are some time jumps here, but if you get a new sword and you put the new sword on, your sword does not change on his back. It stays exactly the same. If you get new armor and put new armor on, it doesn't change. It stays exactly the fucking same.
And the sword's like, you beat Ramu, you get a cool lightning sword, right? No, it's literally just +5 attack. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And the party, again, there's no how do I
it's your dog Torgal and that one lady. What's her name?
Yeah, there isn't a real party system, and it feels like they decided because there's no real party system, we don't have to develop any kind of like supporting cast and everything. They were boring. They had this moment like later in it where they're like trying to like have this moment of like raising morale for everyone and having like this get together and stuff like that, and they had to pull in like the vendor to fill it out because there aren't like interesting characters. They pull in the vendor.
There's literally it's the dominants. The dominants are the host of the icons. They're the most interesting characters in the game, and that's it. And like you end up killing half of them. So sorry, spoilers. It's boring as fuck. And on top of that, when I was, I'm not gonna. So for those of you that just want to like know nothing about this game, skip like 2-3 minutes in. I like okay. I'm not going to say who or what or how or why, but some characters may die or they may not die, and then they come back or they don't come back, and there's not a ton of explanation about it, and then they die again anyway, and then they come back again anyway. It like the narrative like swing of like this person's dead, they're alive, they're dead, they're alive again is so fucking frustrating, and it pissed me off because I really liked the start of this game. I really liked the start of this game where they ostensibly just like fucking murder a 12-year-old kid in front of you, and you're like, oh fuck, this is Final Fantasy Game of Thrones. And then like 5 hours later, you're like, nah, it's not. We're back to pussyfooting Japanese cum sluts and all that fun shit.
It honestly, how I would describe this game is, when it comes to visually and the spectacle,
Oh, brilliant.
This is brilliant. This is amazing. This is, pushing. I don't think I've seen some of those big fights and spectacle where, like, I don't think I've seen that before. But everything else about this game feels like a game from like 2 generations ago.
Yeah, the animation budget for this game must be fucking insane. But this, I'm telling you, this game is best experience. Watch the cinematics, watch the big boss fights, and then just skip everything else because it's worthless fluff. It's not a game. They wanted to make their CGI Final Fantasy. You know how they made the Final Fantasy movie and it was sucks, and then they made the second one and it was okay, and then they made Advent Children, and that was actually pretty cool. This is like them wanting to make movies again, is what this is for Final Fantasy.
Yeah, Skill Up made a comment of like, me and you have mentioned, the big spectacle fights and stuff are cool. And some of the main story stuff is cool, but other main story stuff feels like side quests from other games, and a lot of the fights and rooms and stuff like that are literally just like a different skybox and a different like little bit of like architecture, but it's the same thing. You're literally just doing the same thing. There is no variance in like quest design and objective design or anything like that. It feels like a game from 2 or 3 generations ago. I don't get it.
That's unfortunate because I wonder how much of the team that normally makes Final Fantasy is actually working on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or whatever.
I know there's a lot of people working on that. I don't know. I mean,
because that's going to sell infinitely better than 16 is. Actually, I don't want to say infinitely better. I think it will sell better. It captures that Final Fantasy nostalgia that everybody wants to fucking cling on to.
Yeah. I look, it sounds like I'm being super hard on this game. I'm just being fair. Realize that most games I give fives because 5 is average, and I would give this game like a 5. It's not. I'm not IGN. I don't never only give 7s to 10s. Nothing's ever gotten a 10 for me.
Same.
But I do want to point out that while I give this game a 5, I'm glad they did it. I'm glad, because one thing about Final Fantasy, as you mentioned before, is it's always different. It always just tries to push and do something different. And they tried. You know what I mean? I hope they don't stick with this. I hope this isn't what Final Fantasy is moving forward, because we have lost so much.
Yep.
But I'm glad that they're experimenting and trying again.
Yep. For me, it would get like a 6 in total. Because it is not average. I think the story and the cutscenes take it above average. I think the gameplay is average. I think the storytelling is exceptional because it is essentially a movie. It's more it's a better interactive movie than I think of most things that have come out in the last like 2 or 3 years in the cinema.
See, I could get that, but then I expect a higher caliber of story. And there's parts of it that just don't do it for me. I think I could go 5.5 on my scale, but yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. Nintendo had their Direct.
I mean, there's one huge thing that came from that, at least for Brian. a whole new generation is going to get to learn what the brilliance of Super Mario RPG is. That was
That's
one of the
true.
best games ever made, and so many people never got to experience it, even when it was new. So just I can't wait for people to experience like how brilliant that game was, and
But
then think back that a lot of the stuff that they're doing, like it's not new. It is literally just a visual upgrade. Everything else is the same. So a lot of these things you're gonna be like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, and they did that decades ago.
you know
Decades
what's
ago.
fucking annoying is we had a Nintendo Direct and they didn't announce new hardware.
Yeah, everybody thought they've been the last two. They're like, because look, we're not dumb. We've seen like background patent, filing and things. They're working on the next Switch,
Well,
but
they have to be. They'd be stupid to not be at
but
this
there's
point.
something that like they just I don't get it. Maybe they ran into a problem and they're it's taking longer than they thought or whatever. Because everybody thought it was going to be the last one, like the end of last year, and it's still not even now. If they don't do it by the end of this year, then something went horribly
Do
wrong with their development.
you
Like what?
think they wait until like a Nintendo Direct in October and they announce it there because they're trying to squeeze every last drop of the Nintendo Switch sales figures, which are still pretty strong at the moment?
I don't know. It's kind of dangerous because you want to release your console right before the holiday season, right? So do you announce it and be like it's coming out in less than a month?
Oh, well, no, I mean, if you say, like, let's say they do October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, like the first week in October, they have their Direct and they say it's coming out December 5th or something like that, 2 months from now. They still technically just make it in time for the holiday season.
Technically, but they try to hit at least November. Like December is a really late release. Like
Sure.
most manufacturers, especially when it deals with hardware, want a piece of hardware coming out uh at latest in November, but they're
Or
usually shooting for mid to late October
you know what?
for the holiday
They
season.
they they could be looking at their sales figures this year and their sales figures are fine and they're worried about next year, so they're holding the Switch 2 until next year.
That could be a thing. It has to be something that they're doing on the back end like that,
Yeah.
or or
It's
there's
something
there's
weird.
some kind of like development like hardware thing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
because we still don't have it, and it's fucking weird that we still don't have it. Like, it's and by the way, Nintendo also super shitty anti-consumer. I I think my game of the year at this point, I was kind of I was hoping Final Fantasy 16 would be a contender for game of the year. It's not going to be for me, not even close. Um, I'm still thinking my contenders for game of the year are going to be Armored Core, Starfield, and Baldur's Gate 3. And maybe Remnant 2 and maybe Payday 3. Um because all of those games do things that I love in really interesting ways.
I think it's interesting that like everything we're naming is or you've named so far is stuff that's like really not out yet. I'm trying to think of anything that's like come out yet that I would put as like a game of the year
I
contender.
can't. So, okay, the only one that could possibly be a game of the year for me would have to be Tears of the Kingdom. But it's not going to be, and here's why. I started playing Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch. I fucking hated it. I couldn't stand it. It gave me headaches. It was 15 to 16 FPS. It was horrible. The frame rate and just the resolution, it was pixels in some instances. It looked disgustingly bad. And then I emulated it at 4K at 60 FPS. Night and fucking day difference of how good that game is when it has a reasonable frame rate and resolution. And
Yeah, I
it made me hate what Nintendo is doing to their consumer. Hate
yeah,
it.
I
Because they are selling a $250 console to their consumer and they are making a profit off of every single one of those consoles. Meanwhile, Xbox is selling you a $500 console, now $400, $350, whatever, They are losing money on every single one of those consoles just to get software out the door and to make sure that their system can support 4K at 30 FPS.
Yeah, so when I look at games that have come out so far this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not what I would consider game of the year, but when I look at games that have come out so far this year and what I think would be in game of the year runnings for big games, shows and what people usually put, I can see like 4 contenders right now. Hogwarts Legacy won't get it because of the controversy.
Yep.
Star Wars Jedi Survivor
Won't
doesn't
get it
really,
because of the performance issues.
yeah, doesn't deserve it. Tears of the Kingdom, again, doesn't really deserve it in my opinion. Diablo 4. These are all good games, but none of them are like true game of the year to me. None of them scream game of the year to me, but that's all
So-
we've got that's a contender so far. Really. Like, you're not putting Forspoken up there. You're not putting
No.
Minecraft Legends.
No.
Minecraft Legends was a great game. It's not going up there. You're not putting Hi-Fi Rush, which is an amazing game, but it's not a game of the year game.
No,
You know what I mean? Like,
it's not that complete package.
Atomic Heart was actually pretty fun, but that's,
Oh.
that's a...
I got halfway through Atomic Heart and just couldn't stand the fucking game anymore.
There were parts that did drag on. Yeah, 100%.
We'll talk about that next week. But Diablo 4 for me was a more fun experience than Tears of the Kingdom was. But that fun stopped once the main story ended. When I'd played through the main story once, I was done with Diablo. There's no in-game content, and the in-game content in Diablo 4 is some of the worst in-game content Diablo has ever had. What they took, I really don't understand how they regressed backwards from Diablo 3 to Diablo 4. And Diablo 4 is Diablo 3 was terrible on launch. Diablo 4 is terrible on launch. There are no rifts, there's no mapping, there's nightmare dungeons, hell rifts, and world bosses. Hell tides and world bosses. And the Legion event is boring as fuck. There's no point in doing that. That's it. All 4 of those things, all they do is give you loot. The Paragon system is watered down. It's just boring. There's nothing to do.
And look, I realize this is how this is done for these types of games, but the fact that the seasons are going to be the way they are.
Oh,
not
yeah.
for me.
Well, and so here's the thing. I hate to burst these people's bubbles, but the ARPG bros being, yeah, of course it resets every season. Don't you know that? And it's like, no, Path of Exile resets every season, and Path of Exile is fucking boring because you've played through the story 15 fucking times, but you don't want to admit that. So you're just going to play through it a 16th time next season, and then get to maps. And really, you wish you could just start at mapping in Path of Exile, don't you? But you don't want to admit that. Well, what if in Diablo 4 you could just start at level 50 and start doing nightmare dungeons? Wouldn't that be more fun? But they don't want to admit that. This is how it's done. Fuck you.
Yeah, see, I don't know if this counts or not. I was actually going back and looking at my games played. The game that I would give game of the year so far, and it's probably going to end up going to Starfield or something else when more games come out this year, actually didn't come out this year. It came out at the very end of last year. I didn't realize that. And that would be Chained Echoes, which is a very old school type game.
Yeah. I very much hope that Starfield or Baldur's Gate or even Armored Core gets the game of the year. Because, I mean, who knows? FromSoft could pull it. FromSoft could have it 2 years in a row, which would be fucking hilarious.
I look, I like Armored Core, but it's niche. Let's be real. There's just because it's so hardcore, and they've said they're going to keep it that way. And so Armored Core is slower, more hardcore gameplay.
Listen.
Like, if you think Dark Souls is controversial, or
No, I don't know if you've seen the gameplay. This Armored Core is very fast paced. And Armored Core has actually always been a very traditionally fast-paced mech battler.
Fast-paced mech battler.
Maybe you're thinking of Chrome Hounds, which FromSoft also did make, which Chrome Hounds is incredibly slow-paced. But ostensibly,
it's possible. But
here's what I would say. Dark Souls is also very niche and hardcore. and now it's one of the best-selling games of all time, but in Elden Ring. Who's to say, because they've literally already done it like 3 times, who would have thought Bloodborne would have been one of the most fascinating games for people wanting a remake in 2023? Huh? Who would have said that? When they said, oh, we're making a Lovecraftian Souls-like. Everyone would have been like, you're fucking high, and that's going to sell to nobody. One of the best-selling games of that year, one of the most revered games FromSoft has made. Some people say Bloodborne's the best game they ever made. I disagree. But and then we get Elden Ring, which is one of the best games they've ever made and the best-selling. Who's to say they can't do that with Armored Core?
I mean, anything's possible. I don't know. It's much more niche than you know
It is.
things like Dark Souls are. But and then still, I'm also very I have to recognize my own bias in the sense that like I think Elden Ring is a good game. I do not think it deserved all the hype it got, nor was it Game of the Year in my opinion. I think people just like Tears of the Kingdom, people it had a cult built around it, and it that's what got it.
Wait, what did you think was the Game of the Year instead?
I don't know. Last year, maybe it got Game of the Year because last year was so weak too. Because last year was fucking weak.
I think it was the best game released last year by a big margin, because I think the next closest contender was God of War.
Ragnarok, yeah.
But people overhype. Sony Santa
Honestly,
Monica
the game
did
I
themselves
had the most
dirty.
fun with last year, it was Tunic. To be 100% honest with you.
So Sony did themselves dirty. Santa Monica did themselves dirty because they made God of War, or the first one, and then they made Ragnarok, and the first God of War was like a 20-hour experience condensed. It was great. Ragnarok was like a 50-hour experience. That game should have been 2 parts. This should have been another trilogy. Because Ragnarok got on to the point that it just dragged, and we didn't have any character development from we're getting anyway. Ragnarok wasn't as good as everybody thought it was. It certainly wasn't as good as the first one. I was looking at the Game Awards. The games that they had listed for Game of the Year: A Plague Tale Requiem, Elden Ring, which won, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Stray, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I forgot Stray came out last year.
Yeah, so it won because last year was so weak, in my opinion. I
Yeah.
think. Look, don't get me wrong. I've said Elden Ring is a good game. There are many problems with that game, though, and yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is in your Game of the Years, that's not... I do not think Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a good game.
Yeah, and that also goes into like how we treat what is a game of the year. Like games like Tunic or Chained Echoes or things like that will never get in a game of year running because of the type of game they are.
Yeah, exactly. I think a game of the year delivers you a full package experience that you didn't know, like that you get, and you're just like, oh, that's amazing. And I think if Tunic can deliver the 3 pillars: good gameplay, good narrative, I forget the other one. Good gameplay, good narrative, and good something else. Good game design, which is like art, music, sound, blah blah blah. If it can deliver those 3 pillars in a complete package, then I think you're up for the game of the year. Whether it has multiplayer or not, whether it's ostensibly a fully multiplayer game, whether it's full single player, whatever, And yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 93% recommended on like Open Critic and stuff like that. Critics put it at like an 85, 86 average. Fans do a little higher than that, 90 something average.
I would give it about an 8.5 or a 9.
Yeah, I think it was a full package game. But it's just like people don't look at like games like that as like a game of the year contender. Just the the visually the type of game it is. It is more of a
I don't know. Is that
like an indie game?
Stray got nominated for Game of the Year, and it's pure fucking indie. A Plague Tale Requiem got nominated for Game of the Year, and it's pure indie.
Well, Plague Tale Requiem is also like a technical marvel when you look
True.
at it and the graphics. And Stray, Stray was
Cats.
the darling. Yeah, it was Cats, and the people making it are yeah. Everybody talked about why is Stray here when they were
Yeah,
voting.
Stray's incredibly
So
boring. It's
Stray
a
was
bad.
there for a reason. I don't want to say it out loud, but you know what it was, and I know what it
Stray
was.
is a cat walking simulator.
Stray was there because of friends.
Stray is a cat walking simulator. That's that's all it is.
Yes.
Okay. So, but I do think we have much better games coming out this year than we did last year.
Yeah, this year it could be an actual. They're all coming out near the end of the year, but it could be an actual fight depending on how
I
some of these games release.
I just really don't want to see Tears of the Kingdom take it because of what Nintendo forces their consumer to buy a $250 underperforming machine that Nintendo makes money on. No other console manufacturer makes money on their consoles, but Nintendo does because they're cheap bastards. Then they sell you a $70 Zelda game on top of that they get all the income for too. That runs at 15 FPS. And I'm going to call Destin from IGN out on this. He says, you guys give Tears of the Kingdom a pass, but you won't give Starfield a pass. I'm not giving any of them a fucking pass. Would I rather Starfield be at 60 FPS with slightly less fidelity? Yes. Do I understand that there are technical limitations and expectations for consoles that it has to be at 30 FPS? Yes, that's why I play on PC, because I get 60 FPS anyway. Fuck you. But no, I don't give Nintendo a pass. And in fact, the performance issues directly impact what I think of Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom, in fact, any most specific Switch games don't get a recommend from me because they're bad, because they perform badly, because you're playing a janky ass game on a janky ass console that at 20 FPS, and it hurts my eyeballs and it ruins my experience.
Yeah. I mean, it got no pass from me either. Though there are a lot of people that were giving an excuse as well, like it's on a last gen hardware. You know what I mean? I don't expect the same.
That's
from
Nintendo's fault. Put out the Switch 2, fuckers.
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, exactly. I don't care. You chose to release it on this. You had the choice. Like, you designed and chose to release it this way.
Yep.
It does not get any sort of consideration like that. No.
Yeah. It's a weird world, man, where opinions are so fucking weird. Because you would think, and I mean, we've even disagreed on opinions, but you look at some people's opinions and you're just like, how do you think like that? What's going on in that brain? That's weird.
You mean like the man who like without any sort of like trolling or whatever in his body posted that the people in the submarine that's all a cover up because sharks made of human flesh, I'm quoting him, can go down to that depths and survive, so how can a metal container not? I just
Oh.
And he's like, what are they hiding? And I was just
all
like,
right, guys, that's it for this episode of the Live Service Podcast. We're going to get out of here before Brian gets the conspiracy theorist here. I'm out. Fuck that converse. You guys have a good, what is it, Tuesday morning, Sunday? Whatever, bye.